The cave was never marked on any ranger map. Spring 2024, Yosemite National Park. A maintenance ranger inspecting storm runoff near Tenaya Canyon noticed something odd, a narrow fissure in the granite wall that hadn't been visible the previous season. Snowmelt had stripped away years of debris, exposing an entrance barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. At first glance, it looked like any other hollow in the rock. But inside, about 30 feet from the opening, his flashlight caught something glinting in the darkness. He crouched, brushed away sand, and froze. It was a camera lens, half buried in silt, still attached to the frame of a broken tripod. And next to it lay a rusted metal thermos engraved with 2 words, E+D. The ranger radioed his supervisor, his voice shaking. Those initials matched a case Yosemite had never officially closed. In 1999, a couple from Sacramento, Ethan Walsh, 29, and Dana Cooper, 27, vanished during a weekend camping trip. They'd arrived Friday, checked into a campsite near Mirror Lake, and were last seen buying trail mix at the park store. Their car was found the following Monday, locked, with maps spread across the dashboard and their tent still packed in the trunk. Searchers combed the area for weeks. No footprints, no personal items, no sign of struggle. It was as if the park had swallowed them whole. The story dominated California headlines that summer. Yosemite couple disappears without a trace. Fury spread like wildfire. Bear attack, cliff fall, hidden river currents, but none explained the total absence of evidence. Now, 25 years later, a cave that didn't exist on any park survey had just given their initials back. When investigators arrived at the scene, they found the narrow passage opened into a hidden chamber about the size of a small bedroom. Inside, the air was damp and heavy, smelling faintly of decay. The walls glistened with condensation, and near the back corner, something white protruded from the dirt, a fragment of bone. It took another 2 days before recovery teams could safely excavate. The chamber floor was unstable. Layers of silt deposited by runoff and snowmelt over decades. Every shovelful seemed to exhale the past. When the first skull emerged, tilted slightly to the left, the entire team fell silent. Forensic analysts would later confirm it was Dana Cooper. The discovery reignited one of Yosemite's most haunting mysteries. News vans swarmed the park gates, their headlines uniform. Remains found in hidden cave may belong to missing 1999 couple. The ranger who'd found the site refused interviews, citing nightmares. The air down there felt wrong, he told colleagues, like time hadn't moved. As search teams widened the excavation, they found more artifacts. A watch, a torn sleeping bag, fragments of a notebook. Every item bore the same initials, E+D, but no sign of Ethan. Only his camera, water damaged but intact, film still inside. When technicians in Fresno developed the roll, the first few frames showed normal snapshots. Dana smiling at the trailhead, Ethan adjusting his pack, the waterfall glowing under evening light. Then, halfway through, the tone shifted. The next image showed a faint silhouette of the canyon floor at night, the flash reflecting off something metallic in the dark. The final frame was blurry but unsettling, an indistinct shape, humanoid, crouched low beside what looked like rock or debris. Investigators debated what it was. Some said it was a bear. Others thought it was just Ethan's shadow. But one detail unsettled everyone, the timestamp. The last photo was taken 2 days after park rangers logged the couple as missing. That meant at least one of them had been alive longer than anyone thought. The FBI reopened the file. Archived reports painted a simple picture. Ethan and Dana were young, adventurous, engaged to be married that fall. He worked as a civil engineer. She taught art at an elementary school. They'd met on a Yosemite hiking trail 5 years earlier and returned every anniversary. Friends said the park was their place. On May 14, 1999, they left Sacramento around noon. At 5:23 p.m., a gas station receipt confirmed their arrival near El Portal. By 7 p.m., their campsite reservation was logged. A ranger remembered them, polite, well-prepared, no signs of trouble. The following morning, they planned to hike a lesser-known path near Mirror Lake, a route Ethan had marked with pencil on their map. He'd written a note beside it, quiet route, fewer tourists. That afternoon, another hiker, Tom Jenkins, told rangers he'd seen a couple matching their description near the Tenaya Creek crossing. They looked happy, he said, holding hands, taking pictures. It was 3:45 p.m. By sundown, a storm moved in. Visibility dropped to near zero. Several hikers turned back, but no one saw Ethan or Dana again. When their car was discovered Monday morning, locked and untouched, rangers assumed they'd gotten lost in the storm. But the dogs found no scent and helicopters spotted nothing. For weeks, volunteers searched ravines, streams, cliffs, even old mines. Nothing. Over time, theories fractured into two camps: those who believed they'd fallen victim to the elements, and those convinced something else had happened, something human. In 2001, a new witness emerged, a former seasonal worker who claimed he'd heard voices in the canyon at night that summer. Someone was calling for help, he told investigators. But by then, the case had gone cold. Now, with Dana's remains found in a cave that didn't appear on any geological survey until 2024, investigators questioned whether the couple had stumbled upon it themselves, and if so, why hadn't they been found earlier? Experts proposed that the cave's opening might have collapsed during a minor landslide in early 2000, sealing it completely until recent storms exposed it again. Inside, the temperature and lack of airflow had created a natural preservation chamber. But that explanation didn't account for the photo timestamp, nor the missing half of the couple. When the first forensic report arrived, it added another layer of mystery. Dana's injuries didn't match a fall or animal attack. She'd suffered multiple fractures, consistent with blunt impact, possibly from debris or rock, but none fatal on their own. Cause of death, hypothermia, secondary to exposure. Time of death, estimated 48 to 72 hours after disappearance, meaning she was alive long enough to try to survive. Investigators scoured the cave walls for signs of writing or markings. They found one, faint, carved into the rock near the entrance. 3 letters, E.D.C., Dana's initials, followed by a crude arrow pointing upward, toward the light. Somewhere beyond that arrow, Ethan Walsh had disappeared. That night, as floodlights illuminated the cave entrance, a ranger standing at the edge noticed something metallic farther down the slope, a flash that didn't belong to rock. He waded through mud until his boots struck it, a rusted lantern, half crushed. Next to it, embedded in the earth, a bone. The excavation lights went dark for a moment, as if the mountain itself had exhaled. Torches flickered. Someone whispered, "He's here." When power returned, they saw it clearly, a hand, still wearing a wedding band. By sunrise the next morning, Tenaya Canyon was sealed off. Rangers erected a perimeter around the cave, floodlights humming under the low fog. The mountain loomed, silent and cold, as if waiting for permission to breathe. Inside the cordon zone, forensic technicians worked with surgical precision, brushing away layers of sediment that hadn't seen daylight in a quarter century. They uncovered Ethan's body over the next 6 hours. He was lying face down, one arm stretched forward, as if crawling toward the entrance. His spine and ribs were fractured, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle. But his wedding band still clung to his finger, faint gold against bone. Time had hollowed him, but something in his posture, frozen mid-struggle, spoke louder than words. Detective Valerie Rhodes stood watching from the cave mouth. She'd flown in from the State Cold Case Division, her file thick with unsolved disappearances from Yosemite's archives. 25 years, she murmured, and they were 20 yards apart. The medical examiner confirmed what the scene already suggested. Ethan had survived Dana by at least a day. He died trying to reach the surface. In his jacket pocket, they found something extraordinary. Folded notebook pages wrapped in plastic film. The ink was faded but legible. The first lines stopped everyone cold. "We found the cave by accident. It wasn't on the map." The air inside felt warm, like the mountain was breathing. Dana said she heard water. I think it was the echo of our own voices. The entries continued sporadically. May 15. Lost our bearings when the fog came in. Tried climbing higher for cell signal. Wind louder than the river. Dana slipped. She's hurt but awake. May 16. Food gone. Light nearly out. Think we circled back somehow. Saw our own tracks. Dana says she heard someone outside last night calling her name. Sounded like me. I was asleep. May 17. Storm again. Dana keeps whispering that the cave feels wrong. I told her it's just the wind. The final note trailed off mid-sentence. If anyone finds this, tell her. It ended there. The evidence suggested a brutal truth. They'd been trapped by collapsing rock after entering the fissure during the storm. But that didn't explain the time-stamped photo taken days later, or the strange humanoid shape captured in the final frame. The film was reanalyzed using spectral light. Under infrared, faint outlines appeared in the dark corner of the image. A second figure, crouched beside Ethan, features indistinct. Investigators initially thought it might be Dana, but proportions were wrong. Too tall, too thin. Some trick of shadow, maybe, or a distortion caused by moisture on the lens. Still, one detail unsettled the analysts. The figure's eyes reflected white, like an animal's under flash. The Park Service avoided public comment, issuing a standard statement about natural hazards and low visibility conditions. But rumors spread fast online. Former rangers whispered about the Yosemite voice legend, an echo phenomenon known to mimic human calls in deep canyons. Locals had joked for decades that the mountain talks back if you shout long enough. Now that joke didn't seem funny anymore. Detective Rhodes focused on the physical evidence. Beneath the rock shelf where Ethan had fallen, she noticed faint carvings in the granite wall, lines intersecting in a strange geometric pattern, almost like tally marks or a crude map. She photographed them, sent the images to a geological specialist. The reply came back within hours. The etchings weren't random. They aligned perfectly with known cavern fissures beneath Tenaya Canyon. Whoever drew them had been trying to chart a way out, but there was something else. Scratched deeper into the rock, below the pattern, 3 words in block capitals. Not alone here. The handwriting matched Ethan's notebook. The cave was scanned with LiDAR and thermal sensors. Behind the main chamber, ground-penetrating radar revealed another void, a sealed tunnel running nearly 40 feet deeper, filled with loose sediment. Excavation halted until structural engineers could assess the risk. The ranger who first found the site refused to go back inside. "The air's wrong," he kept saying. "You dig too deep, it feels like it's breathing on you." When they finally opened the tunnel a week later, they found no bodies, no artifacts, only claw-like striations along the stone. Running parallel, man-sized and deep. Some geologists said they were formed by water pressure. Others weren't so sure. The SBI's Behavioral Forensics Unit reviewed Ethan's writings for signs of delirium. Exposure, dehydration, and oxygen deprivation can cause auditory hallucinations. They concluded he'd likely imagined the voice Dana reported hearing. Cognitive mirroring, they called it, when the brain projects familiar patterns into white noise. The cave's acoustic properties amplified that illusion, creating what rescuers described as voices in the rock. But the timestamped photograph still defied explanation. The old Nikon model didn't allow manipulation. The frame was authentic, and the shadow wasn't random noise. It had shape, proportion, intent. Rhodes presented her findings in Sacramento that fall. Official cause of death: accidental entrapment and exposure. Secondary note: psychological deterioration due to isolation. Case closed. Yet when the archived evidence was returned to Yosemite, one technician hesitated before sealing the film canister. Under magnification, he'd noticed something faint on the last image's lower corner. Letters etched into the film emulsion itself, as if scratched with a pin. He enhanced it carefully, his stomach tightening as the word appeared. The technician filed it as artifact damage. Still, he couldn't sleep that night. 2 months later, during seasonal cleanup, another ranger discovered something near the base of the canyon, a section of granite where runoff had washed away decades of moss. Beneath it, faint and shallow but unmistakable, were initials carved by hand: E+D, 1999. Above it, an arrow pointing upward towards sunlight. When Detective Rhodes visited the site before it was closed to the public, she stood there for a long time, tracing the letters with her fingers. "They made it further than we thought," she said quietly. "They almost got out." The Yosemite file was finally marked resolved, but within the Park Service, the story lingered. Rangers passing through Tenaya Canyon swore they sometimes heard faint echoes from the rock when wind tunneled through. 2 voices, faint but distinct, calling each other's names. Whether it was geology or memory didn't matter. The cave had given up its story, but the mountain still kept the echo. And sometimes, when storms rolled down the cliffs and fog closed in, hikers said the air carried a single word whispered between gusts: soft, tired, and full of love. Almost. Winter 2025. The snow came late to Yosemite that year, heavy and silent, the kind that buried entire trails in a single night. Rangers closed most of Tenaya Canyon by December, but the cave, the one that had swallowed Ethan and Dana Walsh, remained under constant watch. The park had fenced it off, posted warning signs, and installed temperature monitors to track runoff. But even sealed, the place felt restless, alive under the weight of rock and time. Detective Valerie Rhodes retired quietly that winter. She'd spent months cataloging everything from the case: notes, photographs, fragments of the couple's belongings, and boxing them for storage in the state archive. One folder, however, she kept for herself: Ethan's notebook. Something about it never sat right. Late one night, unable to sleep, she reread the final pages. Most were still illegible from water damage, but under the right light, faint impressions appeared, indentations from words written on the next page. She shaded them gently with pencil until the outline formed sentences. One line chilled her: "The light moves when we close our eyes." She stopped reading after that. In early spring, a documentary crew arrived to film a segment about the case. The producer, young and overly eager, convinced park officials to let them record brief interior shots of the cave entrance. The team entered under supervision, lights flashing against the wet granite. Inside, condensation glimmered like frost. They captured wide shots of the chamber, then packed up after only 20 minutes. Nothing strange happened until they reviewed the footage that night. In one frame, as the cameraman panned across the wall, something moved in the darkness just behind him. Not a shadow, something darker than shadow, leaning in the opposite direction of the light source. When the footage reached the Park Service for review, their digital analysts attributed it to motion blur. Still, one technician swore he saw a face in it. "It wasn't menacing," he said quietly. "It looked tired." After that, no one else was allowed inside. By April, melting snow reopened parts of Tenaya Canyon. rangers clearing debris near the lower trail stumbled on a washed-out tree root tangled with something synthetic. A section of old tent canvas, stamped with an equipment company logo, discontinued in 1998. Inside the fabric was a small waterproof pouch containing a single undeveloped film roll. The brand matched Ethan's Nikon. When the lab processed the film, they found only one frame that had survived. It showed Dana standing at the mouth of the cave, looking back toward Ethan, her hair whipping across her face, the sun behind her like a halo. Her expression wasn't fear, it was wonder. At the bottom of the frame, barely visible in Ethan's handwriting, a note read, "She wanted to see where the light came from." That image became the final piece in the exhibit when the park opened The Vanished Trails, Yosemite's Lost Stories. It occupied a quiet corner, just the photo, their initials carved into rock, and a small speaker playing wind recorded from Tenaya Canyon. Visitors described the sound as hauntingly human, like distant laughter blending with breath. Dana's sister, Lydia Cooper, attended the opening. She hadn't returned to the park in 25 years. Standing before the photograph, she whispered, she was never afraid of the dark, just of not finding beauty before it was gone. After the exhibit closed that night, Rhodes walked alone through the empty gallery. She stopped before the photo, studying the light flaring behind Dana's shoulder. When she zoomed in with her phone camera, she saw something she hadn't noticed before. A faint second silhouette reflected in the sunlight on the cave wall. Taller, standing just behind Ethan's camera position. The metadata confirmed the exposure was natural. No double printing, no manipulation. But she didn't share that discovery either. She simply closed her phone and said to herself, they weren't alone after all. In June, another ranger assigned to monitor runoff reported hearing voices near the cave at dusk. He assumed it was tourists until he realized the access road had been closed for hours. The voices were faint, 2 of them, calling names he didn't recognize, one male, one female. He turned off his headlamp and listened. They came from somewhere deep inside the canyon, rising and falling with the wind. He radioed base, but before anyone could respond, the voices stopped. The next morning, he found small stones arranged in a circle near the cave's entrance, freshly placed. At the center lay a single Polaroid photograph, sun-bleached but recognizable, the same one that had been displayed in the museum weeks earlier. Except this copy was wet, edges warped, and on the back, someone had written in neat black ink, "The light doesn't die, it waits." Officials chalked it up to an overzealous visitor or a copy left by a fan of the documentary. But the ranger who found it swore he'd checked that area the night before. The circle hadn't been there. The incident report was filed, and life at Yosemite returned to normal, or as normal as a place like that ever gets. By late summer, new hikers began posting videos online about strange echoes near Tenaya Canyon. They'd call out their own. She brought flowers and a small flashlight, Ethan's old one, recovered from the cave and gifted to her after the case closed. It still worked. She left it by the carved initials at the base of the canyon, switched on, beam pointing upward toward the ridge. "You wanted light," she said softly. "Now you've got it." That night, from the valley floor, hikers reported seeing something impossible. A faint, steady glow pulsed from the cliffside, soft white, like a lantern behind stone. It lasted only a few minutes before fading, swallowed by darkness. Rangers hiked up at dawn, but found nothing. No light, no battery, no flashlight, just the initials on the rock, freshly cleaned by rain. Months later, when Rhodes cleaned out her desk for good, she found a final envelope inside her locked drawer. One she didn't remember putting there. No return address, just her name. Inside was a photograph. It was the same frame from Ethan's camera. Dana standing at the cave entrance, sunlight spilling around her. But this version had been reprinted, perfectly clear, and now where before there'd been blank shadow behind Ethan's position, a second figure stood fully visible. Ethan, camera raised, smiling. Rhodes sat for a long time, staring at it. Then she whispered what everyone who'd worked that case had thought but never said aloud. He found her. The envelope had no fingerprints. Years from now, hikers will still pass through Tenaya Canyon and talk about the couple who vanished there. Some will say they still hear voices when storms roll in. Others will claim to see faint light through cracks in the rock, like a lantern swinging somewhere deep inside. The park rangers call it coincidence. The locals call it devotion. Either way, the story always ends the same. A young couple wanders into the wilderness, chasing the beauty of fading light. And when darkness falls, they find it forever.